Good morning, Trump's family. Thank you for always watching and subscribing to the channel. Alright, without further ado, let's get into the news. Now, what you just witnessed should be a little bit of a red pill moment. First, CNN's Little Don Lemonhead. It probably won't be, but I think for a lot of people, that's the exact type of experience that makes it impossible to side with the left on cultural issues. I mean, it is just a refusal to accept basic biological facts, and it's nothing but cope. You know, this brings me to the red pill community and some of the points that they make. Now, I'm not in total agreement on all issue with Andrew Tate types and these MGTOW style red pillars, but at certain times, they make some decent points. And one piece of rhetoric that I hear quite often is that boys are generally held to account or standards, and in many cases the same cannot be said for the opposite sex. You know, boys and men are beat down by society. When you have a problem, well, suck it up, be a man, take it like a man is generally what's said, or just figure out your own problems, while women are generally coddled by society. Society rallies in order to take care of them. And this is where almost like a lack of accountability stems from. From the CNN host perspective, most women's sport failing is not their fault. It's actually everyone else's fault. It's actually the lack of advertising. It's not the quality of the product. It's not the refusal for even women to show up to sporting events supporting other women. It's just the advertising. It's everyone else's fault. Well, this is such a slap in the face, considering the NBA, the male players are the biggest supporters of the WNBA. I think that's a great example. And their league spends tens of millions of dollars a year on advertising and player salary to subsidize and prop up the WNBA when they're losing money. Without the NBA, the WNBA wouldn't exist. Not to mention, whenever you're watching NBA games or college games, or sports networks in general, you're constantly inundated with WNBA, or female sport advertising, especially in this woke feminist era. If anything, there's an outsized, almost undeserved amount of investment and advertising budget, and still these leagues fail, and the feminists' response here is, well, it's everybody else's fault. I mean, society is literally propping you up and coddling you, and it's still not good enough. You know, if a male sports league was failing, people would say tough luck. The product's just not there. It's just not good enough. And meanwhile, we're seeing stuff like this. Fair U.S. women's soccer team receives over $6 million. Because the U.S. men's team advanced at the World Cup, the United States men's national soccer team will be splitting their winnings with the U.S. women's team after their win against Iran. The men's team earned at least $13 million. By winning the game, the women's team is set to receive over $6.5 million of that. I mean, what I think this is the case after the contract renegotiations, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, because of equity or something. The men's team is now forced to split their winnings with the women's team, even though they're not playing. The men are playing in the most premier league in the world, the World Cup. It's big money, high stakes, and they're forced to split basically half of their earnings with the U.S. women's team because of equity or something like that. And still, these left-wing activist types are complaining. You have no grounds to complain. And even Don Lemon can see that if you're a left-wing activist group and you're losing Don Lemon, then you know that you seriously have no ground to stand on. And the next argument that Caitlin Collins makes is that women are just so much more talented. On the mind hits her back with the perfect response. Yeah, they're more talented playing against other women. But if you put them in an all-male setting, well, then again, it's just another disingenuous pipe dream feminist argument. And you know, I've actually heard this many times before, that women athletes may not be as strong and as fast as men, but they're more talented. It's complete garbage. If they were incredibly talented, making amazing plays and amazing moves on a regular basis, then maybe there'd be viral highlight clips all over the internet. But there aren't. I've watched the WNBA multiple times just as an experiment to see what the product's like. It's boring. It's borderline unwatchable. The simple biological fact is that women don't possess the same kind of fast twitch muscle fiber, the same kind of hand-eye coordination and reaction time, and honestly, the same kind of vision of the court. These are biological traits that men have gathered since the hunter-gatherer times, and it makes it so that male sports are fast-paced, exciting, with great passing, great moves, a level of intensity that makes it fun to watch. Female sports do not have that same level of skill and intensity. It's just not a good product. And so people aren't watching it. And at the end of the day, feminists might say, Well, it's the misogynist. Men subsidize their leagues and their advertising budget. But really, the fact here at the end of the day is that women are not supporting women. Women don't go to sporting events as much as men do. I mean, of course, they're present. But in a lot of cases, it's husbands or boyfriends, bringing their partner. I bring my spouse to sporting events all the time. It's not that she wants to go, it's that I make her go. That's not to say that there aren't women who enjoy sports and sporting events. There are some who do, but they're a clear minority in respect to men. Men are showing up at these events, and they're supporting the men. Women are also showing up at these events, but they're supporting the men's leagues, kind of going around in circles. The point that I'm trying to make here is that men overwhelmingly support their own leagues, women don't support female leagues, and then they turn around and have the audacity to say that it's somehow our fault. That their leagues are failing. If you so vehemently believe that female basketball, hockey, soccer, whatever, it is a great quality product, then put your money where your mouth is and buy tickets. But of course, we know that's never gonna happen, because going to a WNBA game will literally put you to sleep. But I guess in conclusion, back to the initial point that I was making, what you saw here in this little CNN interaction is exactly why it's impossible to have discussions and conversations, debates with far-left activist types. They're not interested in the truth. They're interested in their subjective endpoint, and they will say anything in order to make their arguments, and they just won't meet in the middle. And this goes from cultural issues like sports all the way to the most important political discussions that we're having about policy today. And this is some big news. Elon Musk just published or just tweeted what really happened with the Hunter Biden story. Suppression by Twitter will be published on Twitter at 5 p.m. And we're going to talk about this because this is a monumental, epic moment in American political history. You can't have a platform side with the Democratic Party to hide the truth about the Democratic Party. You can't do that. That democracy will cease to exist. That is only when Democrats and media pontificate about democracy. What they really mean is they want everything to go their way. They want anything about their corruption, any journalism, investigative journalism, about their corruption, about their possible criminal activity, completely silenced, suppressed, censored, and that's okay for them. That's just fine. Democracy flourishes. And then you have the Washington Post, democracy perishes in darkness. It's like, well, yeah, the lack of discussion about Hunter, about Joe. They said, oh, we'll have their house hacked. It was hacked to a laptop, like the emails were hacked. Well, the DNC emails were actually true. And emails written by the Democratic Party showing Bernie Sanders was cheated. The truth about the Democratic Party is a national security risk. And they can't type an email without or own a laptop without it being everywhere. And so when Clinton had servers with top secret intel that she was siphoning outside of the United States government, you can't have platform side with the Democratic Party. And you see that? You've seen that for years and years now. This not only stifles speech, okay. It's the antithesis of free speech. Okay. The arbiters of truth and goodness and civility. When Donald Trump's brother passed away, do you want to know what was trending on Twitter? #wrong, Trump. Okay. How despicable and vile can you be? Now these are the morally superior people who think that Trump compelled people to commit criminal acts. If he had done so, ladies and gentlemen, that he would have been indicted very late. This is like an respectful rebuttal to Jack White, rock and roll star who tried to mock Elon Musk. Had Trump tried to compel people to commit crimes, he would have been indicted. And the January committee would have already given all the evidence that he broke existing laws that predates Twitter. Twitter did not begin speech laws, like the laws pertaining to the First Amendment did not emanate in like 2011 or whenever Twitter first started. You have existing laws that predate Twitter. If you've committed a crime, then you will be indicted. If you telling somebody to commit a crime, if you truly can compel or incite somebody like they accused Trump of, then you'll be indicted in a court of law because there's enough evidence. The entire American political establishment despises Trump. They couldn't find a shred of evidence to indict him. Not a shred, and we know this because he hasn't been indicted. So a respectful rebuttal to Jack White of rock and roll star, and he's absolutely talented. And but he stated so. Elon, how's that free speech thing working out? Instead of saying, oh, you did a good thing, or you did the right thing from a liberal perspective. Now, as a Jewish American, I feel that yay. It has spiraled into like abyss. I think that what happened was, unfortunately, he painted everyone with the same brush and ignored the fact that in industry, the way the industry is run is despicable and vile, and sinister and nefarious. So the record industry, Hollywood, these are the boxing game. You know, Mike Tyson and Larry Holmes have talked about how Don King Larry Holmes said he fought like a whole bunch of times 1 year, only got paid $200 or so, something like that, to $300 to $500 for like 3 or 4 fights in 1 year. The game is like the boxing industry, record industry. Hollywood industry is a vile, nefarious, sinister industry, with people who are manipulative. And what happened with EA is that instead of calling out specific individuals, instead of calling up specific individuals or suing them, he painted my faith background, everybody with the same brush. And that, unfortunately, is just terrible. And unfortunately, it's made it Kanye, or he made it fashionable, to actually be in, like, to state anti-Semitic things. But it wasn't Trump. Like, you compare like The Nation as an article today trying to link Trump and Elon as like, no, this is the problem with liberal ideology or democratic politics. Anything they see they cry wolf all the time. They try to lump, terrible viewpoints along with viewpoints that aren't terrible that they just disagree with. So Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem, signed an executive order, Trump combating anti-Semitism on college campuses. The Doha Green, and the Doha Green brought Americans home, that's the most important thing for me, with Biden completely botched, but that was negotiated. But I mean, the Abraham Accords was a huge development in that region of the world that benefited the country. I had my bar mitzvah, and nobody has been a better friend to people of my faith. Nobody in US history than Trump. Okay. And so, you even had an attorney who's stating the same thing. And so if you're liberal, and if you're a person of my faith, who doesn't like Trump, okay, well, Trump is like a horrible person because of his words, his actions. His actions are amazing. And his words were nothing compared to what happened with EA. And what happened with EA, one could make an argument that you shouldn't have been banned. But at the same time, if you want it, you don't want a platform that could possibly, if you can make an argument for free speech that Jack White was trying to mock. Oh, how's it going? What? You're deciding, oh, I see you have to choose who gets free speech. And who doesn't, then well, no. Yes and no. The content moderation team of the prior Twitter regime thought that the New York Post was an example of something nobody should. The New York Post story on Hunter was an example of something nobody should hear or read. And they lumped that with horrible, terrible offensive speech that could compel people to commit criminal acts. That's the problem. Hollywood celebrities, that's the problem when you are the arbiters of truth. And you could just lump anything with Ye's current, unfortunate descent into an abyss. And so there's a case to be made in terms of free speech that he shouldn't have been suspended. But it was Elon Musk's call that he thought because of the specific spiral that Ye could have been influencing others to commit criminal acts through his speech. Now, that was a judgment call on Elon Musk that should be celebrated by Jack White. It wasn't celebrated by Jack White because through kind of like this kind of malicious type of rebuttal. The rock and roll star said, oh, well, how come we can't decide that Trump is also compelling people to commit crimes and you get to decide now, Elon? Oh, must be nice. Like no, Trump never compelled anyone to commit crimes. That's why he wasn't indicted. And what happens with media is they sensationalized everything Trump has ever said. But when Biden tells Charlemagne de God, the most despicable bigoted thing ever, that you're not who you are, if you don't vote for him, immediately is swept under the rug. And so you can't compare what took place with with what? With Trump. Trump didn't commit any crimes. Neither did Ye. But what happened with Ye was a spiral that could have compelled people to do something terrible. That was a judgment call on Elon Musk. There's actually an argument to be made that Jack White is actually kind of like pointing out, but he's doing so in like a manner that's trying to, teach Elon Musk a lesson, but the opposite is true. When White says all these folks don't compel, no, these folks don't compel when you were with it was a specific situation. Trump, no better friend, and I have friends and family. I have family in Israel, friends, who are family who were religious, Jewish people like myself, or I'm not religious, but in my background, they love Trump. So comparing the two is completely night and day. That dinner that Trump had, that was a setup. He had no clue that what's his name was coming. Okay. And you defeat terrible viewpoints through logic and reason. I debated Richard Spencer and I defeated him through from the first moment to the last one, especially for the last 20 minutes through reason, logic discussion, if you want to watch that. It's my debate with Richard Spencer, where I defeat him, his logic, his ideology, especially within the last 20 minutes of the debate. But you have to actually defeat ideologies with rational, reasonable logical arguments. And so anyway, to make an absurd leap of logic and say, well, these folks compelled Trump, compelled if he kicked you out, why don't you get Trump out? Because there's a huge difference. Mr. White, in all of media, a huge difference. A cavernous, gigantic distance separating Trump. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Open Source News. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a thing.